want to, it's not her turn to speak yet because we're waiting for Lori McNeil any minute to come on in, but I want to introduce you to Kylie Leota. She is a newer friend of mine, and she comes to us from down under.
Yes, in a cyclone.
Oh yes, how was the cyclone? So she was expecting a cyclone the other day. Tell us where you come from in Australia.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm from Brisbane, Australia, and we are still currently in the cyclone. It's been lingering. It's called Tropical Cyclone Alfred. So it's a male cyclone, so it takes its sweet time to come through. So we're still feeling the remnants of it at the moment, and so I'm actually very glad to be here. I'm very glad that I have power. There's lots of people around us that don't, so I'm very grateful to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yay. I'm super grateful that you're here too, because we were discussing the potential of what may and may not happen.
Yes, we were.
And would there be, so this is the wonderful thing. So I've been doing these virtual summits. Gosh, honestly, I've been doing the summits for probably about 5 or 6 years now. I have been doing them once a month for about the last year, and what we in March, about a year and a half-ish, sort of. And I kind of like it. I like doing the summits. It's one of my favorite things. It's always been one of my favorite things to do. That in my books, of course. And in honor of women, I actually did the did this poster instead. Usually I have a different background, but because I do sell the supplements and the skincare, I thought, in honor of beauty and women, I'm gonna have this background for today. So it's so much fun. I actually had the pleasure of, so I do sell this line. It is from a company called APL Go, and I just had the pleasure of being on a trip with a bunch of the leaders in Dominican Republic, in Punta Cana. So I've never been to Dominican. I live in Canada, as most of you know. And it's actually a lot of fun living here because it's freezing cold right now. So going to Punta Cana is so much fun. And a lot of Canadians go to Punta Cana. Well, not just Punta Cana, anywhere actually in Dominican. So Puerto Plata, and I've actually never been. I've been to like Hawaii like 7 times, and I love it. And I'm like, how come I've never been to Dominican and some of these other countries? And I have been obviously to a lot of countries in the Caribbean, but beautiful country, Dominican, and wonderful people. So thank you for letting us all come in and have so much fun. I do. There's someone trying to come in. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do, Kylie, while I'm letting this person in, and also explain?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Kylie Leota. I'm based in Brisbane, Australia, and I am a coach, leadership executive coach, and I also run workshops, speaker, author, and entrepreneur myself. And I love serving and empowering people to create success, whatever success looks like for them. And I do that through a variety of different ways, through speaking, by running one-to-one or group coaching, and running leadership work as well.
Oh, yes, that's why we're here today. How beautiful. So now I'm going to bring everyone back. Thank you, Lori. Have a great day. I'm going to bring you back to Australia. So we're going to Brisbane, Australia with Kylie Leota. Kylie, if you would kindly unmute, and I am going to let you speak and tell us all about yourself and what you do. And let's start.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Marianne. I always say good morning to you all from the future, because it's actually Sunday morning here in Australia. We're ahead of the game. It's rainy here. I hope wherever you are that it's beautiful where you are. And I'm so excited to be here. And if you're only jumping on now, you might have heard that in Australia, in Brisbane, particularly where I am, we've been navigating a tropical cyclone, like a hurricane in your world, if you're in the States. And what I thought about that, and so Mary and I were talking about this earlier, whether or not I'd even make it here, whether or not have power, whether it had an internet and all of these things. But I actually think, and the reason I kind of mention that is because I think it actually highlights the beauty of being a business goddess, is that showing up even when it's messy, even when it's imperfect, even when it's the middle of the night, And I think that's so true of life. And in my own journey of becoming a business goddess, I think I've had to navigate so much messy and imperfection in life. I escaped domestic violence. I raised 3 kids of my own. I had an injury that ended a career that I loved but was no longer aligning. And as Laurie was talking about, alignment is so important. And so I think it's just so important that we show up even when it's messy, even when it's imperfect. If you keep waiting around for the beauty and everything to be in alignment in terms of perfection, and you will never ever get it right. You've just got to get started. And so resilience is about how we pick ourselves up after we fall. And as I've just described by a few experiences, I've had to pick myself up a number of times. The Japanese have a saying. They say fall down 7, stand up 8. And today I'm going to talk to you about 8 key messages in creating infinite opportunities and infinite possibilities about being a business goddess. But I thought I'd just reintroduce myself. My name is Kylie Leota, and I am the CEO and Chief Vision Officer of Elements for Success. And oh my goodness, the words at midnight. Earl Nightingale defined success as the progressive realization of a worthy goal or ideal. And there are lots of many different elements that make up success. And what success looks like for me might look different for you, might look different for Marianne. Everyone's got their own definition when you take the time to unpack it. And the reason that I bring that up is that I think it's so important because we have this idea of what success should look like, particularly as business owners and entrepreneurs, and it is going to look different for each and every one of us. So I think it's really important to understand that there's lots of different elements and lots of different work that you're working on. And the 8 key messages that I really want to talk about today is how to create infinite leadership in life, in business, in entrepreneurship. And so the 8 key pillars that I'm going to talk about are in alignment with the concept of being infinite. And because infinite is an ongoing evolution. I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago. I'm not the same person I was 6 months ago. I certainly am not the same person I was 6 years ago. So we've got to keep reminding ourselves that this is a continuous improvement journey. And whilst we need to be compassionate and kind to ourselves of where we are in our journey, it's also okay to recognize that this is continuous improvement and that we're going to keep working through this to be a better version of ourselves each day. So the first pillar in infinite is identity. And so much of what Laurie was talking about earlier is about understanding your strengths, understanding your values, understanding what you bring to the table, including your own blind spots. And the reason that your identity is so important is going back to that alignment piece. If you are very clear on who you are, then you're going to attract clients and customers into your business that align to you. Equally, if you're not clear who you are, you've got to find that misalignment of getting confused about who your customer base is, who your clients are, and it's not going to work out as easily. There's going to be very messy times because there's going to be misalignment. And that can lead to lots of self-doubt. Am I doing the right thing? Who am I? Should I even have a business? And we've just got to remember that bringing ourselves back to our identity and who we are helps us stay in alignment with that. And I think it's really important. There's this amazing quote by a gentleman by the name of Vusi Thembekwayo, and he said, "Identity is man-made, so thereby it can be man-changed." And in our case, woman-changed, right? Which means that we have the power to walk in alignment. And if we're reflecting on our own identity and it's not where we want to be, we actually have the power to change that. And so often we walk outside of our own power and we give it away to others because we're not aware, we're not taking conscious action on our own identity. And it's a constant process. And it's also important to look at that aspirational identity. What are the kind of skills that you want, and where do you want to go, and what are the behaviors and actions that you need to take to create that if you're not currently content with where you are? The second pillar is nurturing, and this is all about our emotional intelligence and our emotional agility, knowing yourself and knowing how to, I call it, taking that self-awareness and putting it into practice, theory into practice, taking that self-awareness and putting it into self-management, understanding how you show up under pressure, under stress, when things are going well, when things aren't going well, and also social awareness and social management. We all have triggers, but if we are blind to those, they're going to emotionally hijack us on our journey. So we need to give ourselves compassion and grace as we're learning this process. And also it helps us not give away our power to others. Sure, we've all been guilty of picking up that phone or going to keyboard warrior that email or that response in business and in life. But if we are nurturing ourselves and nurturing others, we're going to show up with greater emotional intelligence. And that's going to foster us to make better decisions, more grounded, and allowing us to respond rather than react. And the emotional agility helps us also be adaptable to the circumstances that are ever evolving and ever changing. And that is the nature of business. So being able to be agile emotionally helps us navigate those storms as we come across them. The third pillar in being a business goddess in the infinite model is about fearlessness. And the way that I describe fearlessness is not the absence of fear. It's about how we move through fear to get to the other side. And we have so many fears that we're facing all of the time. And we talk a lot about fear of failure, but actually our brains are also unconsciously have this fear of success at times. If I do this, if I put myself out there, and what happens if I get too many clients? What if I can't fulfill all my obligations? All of these things that we play. And so we become our own self-sabotagers. And so that's how the fear of success plays out for us. And one of the things that fearlessness requires is courage. And there's a story of the Native American buffalo. It is the only animal that runs towards the storm when a storm is occurring. And that's the reason is not because buffaloes love water. It's not because they love storms. It's because they know that going through it is going to minimize the pain. They're going to move through it quicker and they're going to faster and they're going to get to the other side by facing it. Our human nature is to want to run away from the storm and not face those fears. And what happens is we end up being stuck in that storm for longer. It is like the song that never ends. And it feels like we are doing this to ourselves and we are stuck in this messiness and this ugliness because we're not taking the time to address our fears. And we need some support to do that. But if we are like the Native American buffaloes, we're going to navigate that faster and get to the other side. That leads us to innovation, which is an opportunity to create, to connect, to nurture, to explore, and to develop. It's about cultivating our own curiosity and our own creativity. And if you'd asked me many years ago if I was creative and innovative, I would have said no, because I'm not artistic. I'm not musically talented, although I love music. But what I realized is I'm innovative about ideas. I came from a long career of having to create out of the box ideas for traditional problems. And I've been doing that for 20 years. So when it comes to problem solving, I am one of the most innovative people around. If anyone's watched that movie, Mary Poppins, where she pulls stuff out of her bag, this infinite, endless pit of stuff out of her bag. I'm like that, but for strategies. I've never run out of ideas yet. I'm like the Mary Poppins of strategies. I think the other thing about being innovative is also understanding that generally by nature, we are empathetic. As business goddesses and as women, we are generally empathetic people. And that can be dangerous at times because it can be a bit like a thermometer. A thermometer reads the room and it decides what the temperature is by reading the room around it. So when we have a thermometer, if the energy around us is low, we tend to lower our energy. If the energy is high, we tend to raise our energy. And that's how empaths work, because we absorb the energy around us. What we need to be is the thermostat. This thermostat sets the temperature of the room, it sets the energy, and it guides that innovation and practice. So always remember to be the thermostat, not the thermometer. As we're navigating through our entrepreneurship journey, we know that we have to have confidence. But what we need to not have is this supremely high issue with our egos getting in the way. And so the next pillar in our infinite journey in business goddess land is around understanding to serve with nobility. And that is a commitment to integrity, humility, and to being of service with others. And Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is in the service of others. And so often when we get caught up on our own metrics, like Laurie was talking about earlier, metrics are important. We need to understand them. But every biggest shift I've ever had energetically and in business is when I've been caught up in myself and worrying about what's going on for me. When I take a step back and remind myself that my role is to serve others and that I have a message to give, to support and help and empower others, then automatically the energy shifts and then the metrics tend to follow. So getting caught up in our own ego about what we need. So we need ego-free leadership, and we need to separate that from confidence. Confidence is wonderful. It's our ego that gets in the way. The last few pillars are about creating influence, and that's a foundation in psychological safety. And we need to model the behaviors that we have through things like effective conversation, communication, and a foundation in psychological safety. And we need to create that for ourselves. And that's a sense of inclusion, a sense of being a learner, being able to value our own contributions that we bring to our table, and to be able to navigate challenges that we face. The second last pillar is transformation, and that's bringing everything together. We create a legacy regardless of whether or not we want to. So we have the choice to make a conscious decision about the legacy that we leave rather than an unconscious legacy. And as what this community presents today and this summit presents today is the final pillar in our infinite journey, which is ecosystem. By surrounding yourself with people that will lift you up rather than pull yourself down. And also making sure that you're navigating your ecosystem within yourself and keeping everything in harmony. And sometimes that means that something will stand up and act quite loud, such as work will take a focus for a while. But in order to create the perfect symphony, everything has to operate in alignment, and that is bringing that self back into it. And so to create the perfect ecosystem, we need to make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with those people that can support us. And one of the things that I've done is do an energy audit. So every time I finish a conversation, every time I'm in a meeting, every time I leave a convention, a summit, anything I do an energy audit. Do I feel energized by what I did, or am I feeling drained? And then I recalibrate and recalibrate and recalibrate until I'm making sure that I'm only engaging in energy activities that give me energy rather than drain my energy. So I hope those 8 key takeaways have been really helpful for you today in order to be your business goddess, your best business goddess. And on International Women's Day, I hope that you are celebrating yourself, giving yourself grace and compassion for wherever you are in your journey. And remember that being an infinite leader in business, is about an infinite evolution, and that creates infinite possibilities and infinite opportunities. Thank you so much, Marianne, for having me, and I hope the rest of your summit and day goes amazingly.
Oh, it will. Thank you so much. And thank you.